Hi, Dr. Young.
Hi, Dr. Ben. How are you?
Good. How are you doing?
I'm doing well, thank you.
Good to see you. So, I'm Dr. Ben Reebs, an associate of the Naturopathic Medicine Institute, or NMI, and I'm working toward my Vitalist Fellow Track certification. The NMI envisions a world where enjoying optimal health allows people to reach their highest potential for inspired creativity. It asserts that the highest ideal in healthcare must act in concert with the healing power of nature. And today we have NMI associate Dr. Lorraine Young joining us to talk about the vitalistic approach to sports medicine and a little bit about endurance running. But before we get to our discussion, Dr. Young, would you please tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure, sure. So, first of all, thanks to Emma and I for inviting me to come on. So, I appreciate that and to have the opportunity. So, my name is Lorraine Young. I'm a 43-year-old female from Three Brooks, Pictou County, Nova Scotia, Canada. I'm a mother of three, a grandmother of three, and I graduated from CCNM, so the Canadian College of Naturopathic Medicine, in 2000. And upon completing that program, I practiced in Nova Scotia for a while, 8 years. And then my family, we made a decision to move to Raleigh, North Carolina. So I took a few years off, and now I do have a practice now in North Carolina under Nova Naturopathic. So it's been an exciting and fun time in North Carolina. But what's interesting to me, and I guess why has this led me into endurance running or sports medicine, is when I took a little bit of time off, I found I'm a type of person who, if I'm going to ask someone to maybe change their diet or exercise or meditate or what have you, I kind of feel like I need to do it myself and experience it. So I played around with my diet a bit, but then also jumped into, trying to get physically fit again. I'd had my two sons and, needed to get myself back where I felt that, I was in a more healthy state. So I started running a little bit here and there, only for fun. And then over a bit of time, someone said, you should do a race. I did. I was reluctant, but I did. And I kind of liked the little bit of adrenaline rush and the jive that gave me. So I pursued it. So it was a 5K, then it was a 10K, then it was a half marathon. And I was like, there is no way after I ran my first half marathon, I'm ever going to run a marathon. Why would anybody want to do that? To a year to the date after that, I ran my first marathon. And then since have run a couple of ultras, I've done a 50K and I did a 50 miler. And I guess where I feel, with exercise and sports and, that type of thing, I feel like there's such a, whenever someone says this is the way to do it, there's always someone else who says, no, how about this or that? So it really does become an individualized approach. And I think this where comes in, where being a naturopathic physician, our background and knowledge of how to approach it from a more vitalistic way, and a way that, is more in tune with looking at diet and looking at, recovery and sleep and vitamin mineral, and that plays a big role with it. So it intrigued me partly because I've never had to train my body before to do something like that, and was like, can I? And then I actually was able to train it to run longer, to run harder, to run faster. And so I was intrigued how much the body does adapt. So whether that's to sports or whether that's to an illness or what have you, or stress, which physical activity is a form of stress, it was pretty intriguing to me. So it led me to do well in my running. I have some course records. I've won some races and that sort of stuff. So it's been interesting, but it's also humbled me at the same time, and realized, that you do need to step back at points and, recover and let your body heal. And I think that sometimes can be difficult for some people, especially whether you're in endurance running or whether you're in triathlon or whatever that could be. So I found a variety of techniques or ways that I feel, that I've looked at and have researched and, have heard about other coaches that approach sports medicine this way and that, and have kind of blended it to make what works for me. And so that can be different for everybody. So I think trying to find that individual approach is where a naturopath comes to be a key aspect. And we can talk about that a little bit. But one thing with exercise in general is we know the physical aspect of it. We know that, it moves the muscles. So from a naturopathic perspective, this is important because as we talk about, how do we detox the body and how do we move lymph and blood and that sort of stuff. And one way of doing that is exercising, is contracting and relaxing those muscles. That's how you get venous return. But that's also helps to support the lymphatic flow. So as a naturopath, I also look at exercise as a form of detoxing, right? One of the biggest detoxification methods in your body is your skin. And when you're exercising, you're doing that. You're sweating, you're moving, the lymphatic system, the circulation, etc. So we know that just from, a physiological standpoint. But that also comes into play where a naturopath can be key is when you're looking at sports medicine or people who are looking at more endurance running, that sort of thing, is when you sweat, your sweat's not just composed of sodium, potassium, calcium, magnesium. It also is composed of zinc and copper and iron and chromium, and that sort of stuff. So those are things that as a naturopath, we take that into consideration. Looking at perhaps a chief complaint that someone's coming in with, whether that's consistent cramping, whether that's consistent strain in a certain muscle. I think those are important things that we look at and assess and determine, okay, well, let's look at your diet then. Are you getting enough of these minerals in your diet? Are you getting enough of these certain vitamins as well? And so, each naturopath will look at that differently and evaluate it in a different manner of what, their choices. But I think that's something that's really key when you're looking into sports medicine and sports nutrition. And when it comes to endurance running, where you're constantly using those muscles and burning those minerals and that sort of thing with muscle contraction and healing and recovery, I think that becomes a big part of it. And I think it's important to look at those aspects, even with regards to prevention. So before someone's even coming in with an injury or fatigue or what have you in their training. So the other part to it too, and looking just at the physical aspect, is there's certain things when someone comes in their training, like sports injuries can play a big role, especially with endurance athletes. And, the hip starts to ache, the muscles are getting sore. Well, something like hydrotherapy can be a wonderful means, again, of getting the circulation into that area, pulling it out, pushing it in, pulling it out, and helping that muscle, that tendon or ligament, which sometimes aren't innervated really well, to heal a little bit quicker or a little bit more efficiently than it would if you were just applying ice or, doing nothing with it. So I think naturopathic medicine can play a big role in that too. Another aspect, we talk a little bit about the physical, but a huge one is also the mental. And so we know with regards to science and studies that yes, it can alleviate depression and anxiety and that sort of stuff. But also in more recent research, things of like neurogenesis in the brain or neuroplasticity in the brain and helping the brain make more, the volume of the gray matter or, how well the connections in the brain are working. And exercise has been shown to improve that. And that doesn't even have to be endurance running. That can be walking, that can be biking, swimming. It can be going for a hike as well. So there's always that aspect of it that I always encourage. And when people come in to see me, whether they're into exercise or not, I think it's important to look at that because it's such a key role, at least I feel, in someone's overall health is their body moving? And what effect is that having for them? And one aspect that I look at that when we talk about a bit about, when I mentioned neurological function, is it also brings me back to how to vary exercise. So yes, I like running, but, doing that same motion repeatedly time after time, you're using a lot of similar muscles all the time. So what about those other muscles that are to counteract that? So looking at your little gluteus minimus, how can I structure or strengthen that a bit more? So maybe my hip flexors aren't so tight as a runner. And those are all things that I feel are important so that you're not just running. I think that you have to do some other exercises that are counterbalancing. So, as a runner, I think swimming is a good thing because you're not using your legs. You're not beating on your legs as much, your feet, etc. And you're using your arms. So if someone wants to become a more efficient runner, I think doing upper body strength or doing swimming or, something else that stimulates the upper body is a good suggestion. You're going to be more efficient at the way that your muscles move, even though as a runner, you're like, I really want my legs to go fast. How do I do that? So it's just another aspect to take into account, looking at that whole person. So some key things that I think as a naturopathic doctor, we look at when someone comes in is their history. We spend an hour and a half to 2 hours with someone. We're looking at what are your patterns and how could we fit exercise into this plan of yours that we're looking at. And that may be simply, saying, well, if someone doesn't exercise, it can be, well, let's get you out for a walk. Let's try that 5 minutes twice a day. And that's one thing too, when I look at exercise is I'm not in the belief system that you can, and nor would many people be, I'm sure either, that you can go run for 2 hours in the morning and sit at your desk all day. I really believe that, workouts, it's good to break workouts up and, whether you do some sort of physical activity in the morning and then do another walk at lunch and then maybe go for a walk with your family or your kids in the evening, that sort of thing. I think that's really important to break up your day. Our bodies weren't meant to sit still all day. And unfortunately, I know a lot of people, that's what our work entails. And even as us as physicians, we can be sitting a lot. So I always encourage people just, you don't need an hour here, an hour there. Maybe it's like you feeling pretty stressed at work and you get on the floor and you do 10 push-ups or whatever you can do, or some squats. So that can be an important part of it too. And I think too, one other aspect that I really look at is what are other areas as far as like just the treadmill, just running on the road, look at trails, go out into nature. I always encourage people to go outside as much as they can and get their exercise that way. Because there is a different kind of connection that you have with the outdoors, with nature. And I think even in a meditative and in a cognitive way, that it does connect you, more to the outside and then therefore to yourself, and does make you more mindful of, oh, look what my body is doing, or, oh, shoot, there's a snake there, I better not step on it, or, oh, there's a rock there, I better watch that. So I think that's important. One other thing too, which I think is helpful when trying to motivate people, is there's a lot of apps and stuff out there now, like ones for heart rate variability and Strava and Garmin and Sunto and that sort of stuff. I think those can be important, especially if someone needs to keep motivated and needs to kind of have a carrot to, keep them going. But I also believe that there needs to be times with your exercise, whether you're in a hardcore training cycle or you're just looking at it for health benefits, that you take the watch off and you go out, you take the podcast off, whatever you're doing, and you just go out and enjoy it for what it is. So I think that's a huge and important thing with regards to, looking at the benefits of those apps, but not becoming addicted to them and defining yourself by what those things are telling you, with regards to your physical activity. Yeah. And then also when you, as an ND, like we mentioned, you're looking at it from the physiological standpoint. There's a lot of talk now of people saying, well, what about the skinny athlete syndrome, where you have these people who work out a lot, but yet they are not healthy at all. And I think then that is, I think, an issue. I think where a naturopath can come into play with that is, looking at the history, looking at not only their history, but their family history, but then also looking at things like, what is the triglycerides doing? What is the HDL doing? What's their hemoglobin A1C? After they recovered from a training cycle, did they still have elevated levels of homocysteine or C-reactive protein, that sort of thing? And those can all help us tailor as to, oh, you know what? these are specific things that, might lead us to something else, or just something for us to be mindful and monitor to make sure that they're not overtraining, they're not overstressing their body, and to make sure they're keeping in tune with what they need to do to continue to exercise and be well. And I'll add one last thing to it, which is probably the most important thing to say about exercise, is the recovery and the sleep. I think a lot of times, as we try to squeeze exercise into that 5 a.m. morning, gotta go run. And so you're getting up early. But I always tell people, some days you gotta wake up, and if you're tired, you gotta sleep in. You need a few days that you can do that, whether it's on the weekends, or maybe it's 5 days a week that you get up early and do that run, but make sure you are taking that recovery time. And me, as an aging person, I'm not in my 20s anymore, that can change. So it could go from a recovery day being maybe 1-2 days to maybe 3. And you know what? Maybe I need the 4th day too. But I think that's all things that, that's looking at the whole person and what really works for them, too, and their diet. It's hard to squeeze into 15 minutes a lot of stuff about exercise and that sort of thing, because there's so many components to it. But that's where I feel, as a naturopath, we have so many tools to look at to help someone understand what is going to be the best for them, the routine, the lifestyle. Is there homeopathics that could help, with recovery, with injury, with the mental fatigue that someone may be experiencing, and of course with regards to diet and that too. So that's why I think it's a nice different perspective. And sometimes, people may not always think of a naturopath as being really sports minded, or how could they help, but I think that they can play a really big role in helping people sustain their physical health, and continue to enjoy it. So like one thing that I do, and I know we're going to get out of time here, because I can talk a lot, is that, I might do a run or something of that sort, but I also find then I'm like, in the evenings, I just want to go for a walk with my family. And sometimes it's just that disconnect from the computer, the technology these days, and just being outside. And I find sometimes you have such great connections during those moments that I suggest to people, you can find a group that you can walk with. There's always meetup groups and that sort of stuff that are running and etc. But just always keep in mind too that there's other ways to get physical activity than just running or endurance running too, and keeping it fun.
Dr. Young, do you have a favorite go-to hydrotherapy treatment? You'd mentioned hydrotherapy. Is there a particular one that you like, or?
So, it really depends on what the person's coming in with. But, a lot of times someone will say, my muscles are aching and they're sore, and it can be, okay, you know what, let's do, maybe about a 3-minute hot and then a 1-minute cold. And we're going to repeat that twice and see how it does. And then they may have to do that a couple times or that day, and repeat it the next day and see how things progress. Sometimes that's an easy thing just to help that muscle, tone down a little bit and relax. But I always, I'm telling people just the home constitutional treatments are a great thing as well, because when you're exercising, you're using obviously a lot of extremity muscles, right? Whether that's arms and legs, but also to help nourish those internal organs. And we do that so well with the constitutional treatment that I think that's important too.
Well, thank you so much. Is there anything else that we're just about out of time? Is there anything else you want to share about the Naturopathic Medicine Institute, or just about vitalism? Or
I have to say that I'm so excited for the Naturopathic Medicine Institute, and I'm so thankful. As an ND, we have opportunities to share our knowledge and learn from people who have been practicing this for years. And I think experience is a huge thing, whether it's medicine or doesn't matter what it is that you're doing. And it's creating such a great community of naturopathic doctors and a sense of just community that I'm really excited for for the Institute, for everybody that's in it, and especially for the public, because that's who we are trying to help and teach, and I think that the Institute is going to be a great resource for not only us NDs, but also for the public as well.
Well, I think it's a good time to wrap up our interview. We're just about out of time. Thank you so much, Dr. Young, for joining us today. And if you want to learn more about how to become an associate of the Institute, you can go on over to .org, and you can watch for our upcoming conferences and events and get in touch with us. At the Naturopathic Medicine Institute, the laws of cure are seen to be immutable, and the healing power of nature is acknowledged, discussed, unpacked, and celebrated. Thanks so much.
Bye. Thank you.